But first, we can't get really going until we talk about COVID.
We have a number of mitigations to control spread. The most important remains the testing of interstate arrivals. The mask mandate has been in effect since Friday. While masks reduce the risk of spread, the mandate needs to be supplemented. That is why today we've made 3 further decisions to control community transmission in the Territory. There will be a territory-wide lockout from 1 p.m. today until noon Monday. From noon Monday, we will commence a vaccine pass system in the Territory. Only residents and essential workers may enter excluded communities in the Northern Territory, and they must have a negative RAT on the day of entry. First, the lockout. The fully vaccinated can continue as they were. For people who are not vaccinated, lockdown rules will apply to everyone 16 and above. If you are not fully vaxxed, stay home. You are at greater risk of catching COVID, becoming ill, and needing hospital care. You may only leave home for 3 reasons. Medical treatment, including COVID testing or vaccination. For essential goods and services like groceries, power tokens, medications. To provide care and support to a family member or person who cannot support themselves. You cannot travel more than 30 kilometres from your home when leaving for one of the 3 reasons. There are only 3 reasons to leave the home now, not 5. Work is not a reason to leave the home for the unvaccinated. The Chief Health Officer has also determined that restriction of movement is critical right now, and that 1 hour of exercise for the next 4 days is not essential. Remember, these restrictions only apply to those who are not fully vaccinated. There has been plenty of time for people to get vaccinated. People who are not fully vaccinated present the greatest risk of spreading the virus and are the most at risk of becoming seriously ill if they get the virus.
All right, so I know that's a lot to unpack. There's several things that he stated there that are really questionable, alarming, seem a little excessive maybe, and maybe some common sense ones too. One of which, all right, so people coming into Australia being tested. I get it. No desire to bring that nastiness into the country. Now, there's some countries, this one, that don't test people like they should as they enter the country, which don't make a whole lot of sense to me, but that's a whole, another story for another day. But they talked about not camps, but quarantine facilities we'll talk about in just a second. But some of the things that were really interesting to me, you can't go exercising because COVID. Now, this is just for unvaccinated. Vaccine, you can do whatever you want, even though they call them breakout cases are happening, which is funny because it seems like, a good portion of the people that are vaccinated are having breakout cases. So I don't think you can really call them breakout cases anymore, but that's not stopping them from doing it. So you can't exercise. You can't travel more than 30, I think it says 30 kilometers, which I guess COVID can only go so far. There's curfews in place. So COVID can only come, during certain times of the day. It basically reminds me of them saying that you have to wear your mask when you enter a restaurant, when you walk to your table, when you sit down, but then you can take it off to eat and talk, when the mask is meant to block the particles coming from your mouth. Well, you're not usually doing a bunch of either mouth breathing or talking necessarily on the way to the table as much as you are at the table. Right? Or on planes. I've heard they do the same thing, but you don't have to wear a mask if you're eating. You do have to wear it if you're not eating or drinking. That makes about as much sense as you can only go 30 kilometers or you can only go out at certain times of the day. What, does COVID know when you're out and about? Come on, man. Where's that?
Come on, man.
Yeah, for real. All right, so let's check this out. All right, so here's an article from Northern Territory government, again, from Australia. It talks about the quarantine facilities. I won't go too deep into this, by the way. Any articles that I use that are in the browser over here, if you see me scrolling through it, you can scroll through it too. The links are going to be in the description below. I do encourage you to do your own research. I do encourage you to look behind me to make sure I didn't just skip through and pick out certain things that I wanted to talk about. So I do encourage you to do that, which is different than seeing it in a lot of the other guys. So Quarantine facilities. There are two mandatory supervised quarantine facilities in the North Territory: Center for National Resilience in Howard Springs, Darwin, Alice Springs Quarantine Facility, Alice Springs. And this is for people coming into the country. You're required to quarantine at the facility closest to your entry into the Northern Territory unless otherwise directed by the Chief Health Officer or their delegate. Returning Australians on the Commonwealth facilitated flights into the Northern Territory will undertake their quarantine at the Center for National Resilience. So Australians coming back versus foreigners coming in. I get all that. You got your face mask stuff here. What happens when you quarantine? One of the things that I saw was interesting, and I think it's here under the facilities. It tells you what you can and can't bring. You're pretty limited on that. Meals are pretty limited there, it looks like, on options. But the Center for National Resilience is primarily single room accommodation with no internal connecting doors. There are 4 rooms to a shared veranda space with mattress and or cots provided for small children. All rooms are king single beds and have in suites. The Alice Springs quarantine facility can accommodate families in shared rooms, but based on room availability at the time. And I was reading that somewhere else in here too, that there's not always family rooms available. So what happens to the families that come into the country that are not fully vaccinated? Are they split up? Are they separated? Or are they forced to live in a small little room? And it does say in here about the testing that you will be tested on the 1st, 5th, and 12th day. These tests are a nose and throat swab. If you do not undergo a test, you will be required to remain in quarantine a further 7 days at your own expense. So, again, I understand some of this stuff, but I feel like that's where they get you. And that's where they got us for our 15 days. I don't know if you guys remember 15 days to slow the spread. That was almost 2 years ago. But they hooked us with that. And now here we are. We're looking at finishing off year 2, going into year 3 of 15 days to flatten the curve. So while some of this makes sense, a lot of it seems extreme to me. So they're trying to hook you on that it makes sense part. Sorry, I at some point you have to just say no, right? Enough's enough. So Australia, brothers and sisters over there, good luck to you. I know you let them take your guns away and everything, so you can't really fight back a tyrannical government, but, you know, do what you got to do. Moving here to America, let's look at something that we've got going on here.
So Chief Judge Sutton pointed out in his dissent from the denial of initial en banc.
All right, so this is the voice of Amy Coney Barrett at the Supreme Court. OSHA did not adopt this rule in response to the emergency, quiet emergency, because that had been ongoing since early 2020. But instead, it responded to new facts on the ground, which included the widespread availability of a vaccine that maybe it was a surprise many people chose to forego, and the emergence of the Delta variant. And Chief Judge Sutton pointed out that in an extended pandemic, or I don't know if we've moved to an endemic such as this one, facts will continually change. New variants will emerge. There might be new treatments, new vaccinations. We have boosters now, right? So now full vaccination might not just be the 2 jabs. It might include a booster as well. So when does the emergency end? I mean, a lot of this argument has been about Congress's failure to act. 2 years from now, do we have any reason to think that COVID will be gone or that new variants might not be emerging? And when must OSHA actually resort to its regular authority and go through notice and comment and not simply be kind of doing it in this quick way, which doesn't afford people the voice in the process that they're otherwise entitled to?
And we don't think that there's an additional free-floating requirement about emergency status that has to be taken into account.
So it could be an emergency 2 more years from now.
Okay, so all really, really good questions. Amy Coney Barrett out there representing us. Thank you for that. But great questions. What is fully vaxxed? We heard the Australian guy, the mate down there, talking about fully vaccinated versus not vaccinated, or, you know, not fully vaccinated. What is that now? Because we've got, you know, it was 1 jab, 2 jabs, 3 jabs, boosters, and eventually they're talking about it's going to be more so treated like the flu, where you can have an annual vaccine. Well, do you have to have an annual vaccine every year to be considered fully vaccinated? Are these restrictions and regulations that they're trying to put out there going to continue as time goes on. And she asked these questions. They were great questions, absolutely great questions. Didn't necessarily get the absolute best answers. And as she pointed out, this came as an emergency request to mandate this for large employers. We'll look at this article real quick. From the New York Times, Supreme Court's conservative majority appears skeptical of Biden's virus plan. The court seemed more likely to sustain a separate requirement that healthcare workers at facilities that receive federal money be vaccinated. So, see, this is kind of what Congress should be doing. They should be compromising and looking for ways to kind of have a little give and take, not just my way or the highway. But that's not what they're trying to do. They're trying to get it one way and not the other. They're not trying to give any ground at all. I think it was AOC said 100% or nothing or whatever it was on, I think it was the Green New Deal or the spending bill. They wanted everything. They didn't want to compromise. Well, that's not how it works. All right. So here we are at the Supreme Court. It's supposed to be fair, it's supposed to be just. There was a great show from Louder with Crowder. I think it was this past Tuesday, where they played some from the same hearing, same interview, whatever it was, where some of the justices or some of the other people in the video or audio rather didn't seem to have their facts together, and they were just throwing out numbers like there's hundreds of thousands of kids in the hospital right now, there's millions of deaths because of Omicron or whatnot, certain numbers that I'm not looking at right this second, but certain numbers that were clearly inaccurate. And these are people trying to make the decisions, and they're spitting out inaccurate information, false facts, if you will. So shame on them. And if it's somebody who's going to be voting and having a say and really putting forward these restrictions or these mandates or whatever, they need to have the facts, the real facts. And it's very unfortunate to hear that they have twisted the truth. They have picked what they like and what they don't like, or they've just made up their own facts. But Amy Coney Barrett, I really liked her in her interviews to be accepted to the Supreme Court. I'm liking what I'm hearing right now. So I think she was a great pick by Trump. And I think she's doing a great job. Here is an article about it. Like I was saying, if we go down here, the Supreme Court's conservative majority seemed to be leaning on Friday toward blocking one of the White House's main pandemic fighting strategies, expressing skepticism that the Biden administration has the legal power to mandate that large employers require workers to be vaccinated or to undergo frequent testing. The oral argument over that mandate, which rocketed to the court on an emergency basis, now that was mentioned as well, on an emergency basis after a flurry of legal challenges around the nation from Republican-led states, business groups, and others, raised the prospect that the court might deal a severe blow to the Biden administration's efforts to address the coronavirus as the highly transmissible Omicron variant continues to spread. A lot there too. So the highly transmissible Omicron variant continues to spread. We're going to come back to that in just a minute. So stay with me, okay? Stay with me. Don't go anywhere. I know I'm dragging on a little bit, but this is important because a lot of this is crucial to what's going to happen next, okay? So they're saying, yeah, we don't like the idea of a full mandate. Maybe we can see if it's a federally funded employer, looking at doing something with that. Again, maybe, finding somewhere to meet in the middle. But again, the question is really, is it legal, and do they have the authority to put out the mandate like that? All right, well, continuing on, see what else we got from CNN Health. Nearly a quarter of hospitals are reporting a critical staff shortage as Omicron drives a rise in COVID-19 cases. That title right there, we're just going to stop there, not even going to fully read the article. Again, if I hadn't already said this, I can't remember. All the articles that I go over here, there will be links in the description. You can check it out and do your own research. Go behind me. I'm not going to read everything, so if there's something I skip over that's vital, I definitely want you to know about it. Definitely don't want to hide it from you. Go out there and read it, check it out. But that headline right there is alarming for a couple of things. One, nearly a quarter of hospitals are reporting a critical staff shortage. We're going to talk about that in just a second, okay? As Omicron drives a rise in COVID-19 cases. So we were already talking a minute ago about how Omicron is spreading, right? And how there's a rise in cases. Keep that in mind. We've got another article we're going to go to here in just a few minutes that's going to address that. But right now, I wonder what's causing the staff shortages. All right, so here's an article, COVID, why California is moving forward with firing vaccine-resistant healthcare workers. Another one, New York's largest healthcare provider fires 1,400 employees who refuse to get vaccinated. Another. Friday marks deadline to receive vaccine for hospital workers unvaccinated fired. COVID vaccine deadline at 3 healthcare systems leaves some hospital workers without a job. Another. Hundreds, remember that, hundreds of hospital staffers fired or suspended for refusing COVID-19 vaccine mandate. Another. Vaccination-related employee departures at 52 hospitals' health systems. And lastly, thousands, not hundreds like it shows right there, thousands of workers are opting to get fired rather than take the vaccine. So what we're really seeing here in so many ways is a self-inflicted wound. Okay, you can argue that the cases are going through the roof and the hospitals aren't expecting all these people. I doubt that's the case. But you can't fire, get rid of, terminate, suggest they leave these nurses, these other healthcare workers, and then turn around and say, oh, we don't have enough people working. A hospital wants to have full beds. They want to be at max capacity as much as possible. That's how they make money. Talked about that in the last video. Okay, I know plenty of people that work in the healthcare system, a lot of them in management. They said, yeah, we want to be at full capacity. That's how we make the money. If we have empty beds, that's money we're not making. That's a sad truth about our healthcare system. Sorry to break it to you, but they are in business to make money too. All right. So to have a shortage, either cases are going up so high, so fast, so severe that they have to bed more people than they're capable of doing, or they don't have enough staff. And we have seen over this last year, at the end of the year, beginning of this year, whatever it was, they've kind of rounded that out where they've been getting rid of employees because they have opted not to take the jab. This is a self-inflicted wound, but they're going to portray it like this, like it's an emergency, so they can push those emergency bills to the Supreme Court, to Congress, to whoever. Okay, because they want you to believe that it's a super huge emergency and that it's taking over. But stay with me, okay? So we see the self-inflicted wound that we're dealing with right now in 2022. Some of it's from things that have already happened in 2022. A lot of it's baggage from 2021 when all these firings or layoffs or whatever started happening, right? Well, let's go back even further to 2020 and take a look at this article right here, this fact checker by Reuters, I think you say it. Okay, so Reuters fact check: 94% of individuals with additional causes of death still had COVID-19. So this is a statement that was making the rounds on it. It specifically says Facebook and it says Trump shared it, but through social media, this statement was making the rounds back on September 3rd of 2020 is when this article was posted. Okay. The very first paragraph right here, shared thousands of times on Facebook, post claims that the CDC quietly updated its COVID-19 data to admit that only 6% of all deaths recorded actually died from COVID. According to the post, the CDC stated that the other 94% of people died from other causes. And then it says this claim is false. There's all these fact checker sites and they'll always say, well, there's a hint of truth to that, or, you know, that's partially false, or however many Pinocchios, I don't know. This said, this claim is false. Declaratively, this is false. Definitively. No wiggle room, right? Down here. This post began circulating on social media in late August 2020 as the number of recorded U.S. deaths related to the novel coronavirus topped 180,000. President Trump, this is important, President Trump downplaying the pandemic's domestic death toll ahead of the November 3rd election, shared the claim on August 30th in a tweet that has since been removed by Twitter, which we know is obvious because he's been removed from Twitter, right? But the point of that was President Trump downplaying the pandemic's domestic death toll. So they said that the claim is false and that by saying that, you're downplaying it, right? Okay, well, how about this? Here's an article from Tuesday, January 11th, 2022. CDC, 94% of COVID-19 deaths had underlying medical conditions. What then? Now, look, I understand how Trump can say things. I understand how these posts and these numbers and everything can be manipulated. I get that. Okay. What may have been said, what may have been said is that COVID was not the cause of deaths for these people, when in actuality, it still could have been the cause of death, even though they had all these other comorbidities, these other illnesses, right? So I get that. I get that. But as we're going to see, there's very, very, very many people that died of COVID, may have just died with COVID, along with these other comorbidities. Let's check this out. Says the Center for Disease Control released information showing how many people who died from COVID-19 had comorbidities or underlying conditions, as they are sometimes referred to by doctors. Okay. And it does say here, according to the CDC, just, for reference, a comorbidity is defined as more than one disease or condition is present in the same person at the same time. Conditions described as comorbidities are often chronic or long-term conditions. Other names to describe comorbid conditions are coexisting or co-occurring conditions, and sometimes also, you get the point. All right, so having multiple illnesses that could or do cause death, right? Now, it's got a link here to the CDC site, and it says here before I go over there, because we're going to go over there. All right, it goes over there, it quotes it, that the table 3, and we'll look at table 3, shows the types of health conditions and contributing causes mentioned in conjunction with deaths involving coronavirus. This does not, however, mean that COVID-19 did not cause a person's death. That's what I'm saying. That could have been the verbiage that's wrong. That could have been false. It doesn't mean that, 1, it was being downplayed, or 2, that the statement was entirely false. Okay? It could have been downplayed because, I don't know, maybe it should have been. We've shut the entire world down for something where 94% of people that have died of COVID have died of COVID with other comorbidities. And you've got a list of them here. Well, let's just go ahead and jump over to the CDC site. Okay. And this number is a little alarming too. It goes on to say the same thing. Here's our table 3 that it was talking about. For over 5% of these deaths, COVID-19 was the only cause mentioned on the death certificate. For deaths with conditions or causes in addition to COVID-19, on average, there were 4 additional conditions or causes per death. Okay, 4 additional things that had to be going on in their body for them to die. Say that's well, it says 94%. This says over 5% were just COVID. So the numbers may have changed a little bit. So you're looking at 95+% of people who died of COVID on average had at least had on average 4 other comorbidities. That is alarming. It's alarming in the sense that we freaked out over something that may not have been as lethal as we thought. Now, the whole time it's been, stay away from the elderly, stay away from the most vulnerable. Now, New York didn't do that. They threw the sick in with the, hospitals and the retiree homes and whatnot like that. Probably not the best thing to do, but they did. And it's what you do in New York, I guess. But my point here is, they're saying that it was being downplayed. Now let's go ahead and look at some things that they're doing now, or saying now, that may make you kind of question things a little bit. Okay. Let's see this next one. All right. From AP, COVID case counts may be losing importance amid OMICRON. The explosive increase in U.S. coronavirus case counts is raising alarm, but some experts believe the focus should instead be on COVID-19 hospital admissions, and those aren't climbing as fast. How about that? So before, when everything was coming out and the elections were coming up, CNN and everybody had those little counters on their screen about how many cases there were, and cases were going up and up and up and up and up. But as we just saw, most of the deaths, which they weren't really tracking as heavily at all, were from an average of 4 additional comorbidities, right? Well, now they're wanting to shift the narratives. Why? Because cases are spiking, because OMICRON is spiking again, because it is significantly more contagious, but it is less lethal. So now they got their guy in the White House. And look, understand this. Trump's got faults. Biden's got a lot more faults. Okay. There's things I have issues with on the right, the left, everywhere. Okay. But right now, he's the guy in the White House. So I'm going to pick on him, and I'm going to pick on his administration because they're the ones that are there right now. As soon as someone else is there, I'm going to do the same thing to them. So I'm going to be fair as can be. Okay. Now, we talked about this again about independent content creators versus major news corporation media who are in the pockets of whoever. And we'll get to all that later in this show specifically as well. But we may have our bias, but we'll tell you up front. We're going to give you our opinions, but I'm going to give you links to articles that news networks don't give you, so you can't do your own research. Okay? So we're going to look at this. The cases are climbing. The hospitalizations are not. It's a more favorable number to the current administration if they shift gears. This next article right here. So Fauci again. The highly contagious Omicron variant will find just about everybody, Fauci says, but vaccinated people will still fare better. Okay, so we got more people vaccinated, so they're going to fare better. Hospitalizations are going to be down. But it's highly contagious, going to get everybody. So it makes sense then, let's not count the cases, because if everyone's getting sick, or everyone's catching it rather, the cases are going to be through the roof. We don't want to track that. It's going to make this guy look bad. Keep that in mind. It is a mind game that they are trying to play on you. Okay? But light at the end of the tunnel, my friends. Omicron may be headed for a rapid drop in the U.S. and Britain. This article came out, Wednesday from the AP. Okay, scientists are seeing signals that COVID-19's alarming Omicron wave may have peaked in Britain and is about to do the same in the U.S., at which point cases may start dropping off dramatically. The reason the variant has proved so wildly contagious that it may already be running out of people to infect. That's funny, and I chuckle there. But from my understanding, and again, I'm no expert in this. I encourage you to do your own research, look at different sources on this. But my understanding is that viruses will morph, and that's how you get the variants, right? They'll adapt, they'll adjust because they want to infect more people. I say they want to, but the idea is that more people will be infected by this. It will have a longer life, but to do so, it will be more contagious, but will be less severe, right? The wonderful thing about that is that if someone's getting Omicron and it's not all that severe, their body is still building that natural immunity against the virus. And by so many people being vaccinated, natural immunity, and the virus getting less and less and less severe from every different variant that's coming out, like others have said, maybe we will be treating this like the flu. Maybe it'll never go away and it'll just be a cold or virus or bug that people get randomly. That would be wonderful, wouldn't it? Or maybe it already has been, and instead of being downplayed, it's been blown out of proportion by those that want to control where you go, when you go, and how you live your life. There is power in that. Hey guys, thanks for checking out this clip from the Morning Mayhem. Remember, this is just a portion of the full show that comes out every Friday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. If you hadn't already, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the full shows or these tasty little nuggets.